Hello, I think I'm connected. Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting shortly. Let me know in the chat if there's any problems with audio or video. Okay, let's get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, I've got the word that audio and video are coming through, so we'll just get going. I'm going to talk today about Nagas and Supannas. This is a continuation from last week's topic, which was the animal realm in general. Nagas and Supannas are considered part of the animal realm, although obviously they're very special cases. The Nagas are serpent beings. They're shapeshifters, so they can assume the appearance of a human being, and in many stories they do so. Their native form, though, is a snake, like a large cobra. They can shift into other forms as well. They seem to be the masters of this power. There's one story about a Naga, a female Naga, changing herself into a small frog to hide in someone's hair. In another story, a Naga saves some shipwrecked sailors by turning himself into a boat so they can climb aboard and get to shore. The Nagas are connected with both the elements of fire and water in different ways. They're said to have a fiery nature and can breathe fire. This is an interesting detail, because we also have, of course, in European mythology, we have fire-breathing dragons. And it seems this archetype of a large snake being is found all over Eurasia. We have also Chinese dragons. In any case, the Indian version, the Nagas, sometimes this firepower is demonstrated in they're becoming hostile or threatening humans in different situations. One of the tropes that appears several times in the stories is a Naga taking over a bathhouse, and this would be like a sauna, and the people are afraid to use it until either the Buddha himself or some Arahant monk comes and tames the Naga, which usually involves a contest of psychic power. One of the, or probably the most spectacular incident of a conflict or a battle of power between a Naga and great bhikkhu is the confrontation of Mahamoggallana with the serpent king Nandopananda. The story goes that the Buddha together with 500 bhikkhus, was flying through the air on the way to visit Tawatingsa heaven. And when they passed over the abode of the great Naga Nandopananda, he grew enraged. He said, "Why do these shaveling monks fly over my head, dropping the dust from their feet? This is humiliating. It's an insult." And he used his powers to enlarge his size until he could wrap his body 7 times around Mount Sinaru. And he spread his hood and covered the whole of Tawatingsa heaven and plunging it into darkness. So all the bhikkhus asked the Buddha for permission to challenge the Naga, and he only granted permission to Moggallana. And Moggallana turned himself into an even bigger Naga and wrapped himself 14 times around the coils of Nandopananda. And then they had a contest of fire and smoke. And in the end, after various displays of psychic power, Moggallana turned himself into a giant Supanna, which is the other topic for today, the nature of these beings, the Supannas. The Supannas are sometimes you may be more familiar with the name Garuda, which is how they're generally referred to in Sanskrit. In Pali, they're called Supanna, which means well-winged. They're enormous birds that have great power, and they're the enemies of the Nagas. The Nagas end up serving as their principal food. They eat Nagas. They too are shapeshifters and can sometimes appear in human form. They also have powers over the weather. When they flap their wings, they can create great storms. Returning to the Nagas, I said that they're associated with elements of fire and water. The watery nature of Nagas is seen in that their own abode, their realm, is underwater. And this is curious in that it seems from the stories we see in the Jatakas, for example, that they don't live in the water per se, but they use the water as a kind of a portal or gateway to their magical realm. So that in the stories there'll be something like a whirlpool in a lake or in the sea, and the Naga will dive into it, and then he'll come into the Naga realm, which is described as having parks and gardens and even ponds of water. So it's not like being under the sea in the water, but the water serves as a portal, as a gateway to the Naga realm. We have a lot more stories about Nagas than we do Supannas, so we have more a fuller picture of Nagas than Supannas. Mostly when Supannas appear in the story, it's in their role as the hunters and predators of Nagas. As we saw, Moggallana turned into a Supanna to terrify the Naga king, and ended up defeating him in that way. There's one story about a Supanna that seized a Naga by the tail, and he was carrying him off to eat him, and on the way they passed a large tree by the hermitage of an ascetic, and the Naga tried to save himself by curling around the trunk of the tree, but the Supanna was so powerful that he uprooted the tree. And when he realized what he'd done, the Supanna became remorseful. He'd taken away the shade from the ascetic's abode. So he approached the ascetic in human form and begged forgiveness. And the ascetic said, "You made no bad karma by uprooting the tree, because there was no intention." So these beings can have some sense of morality, but they are still classed in the animal realm, so there's no possibility for either a Naga or a Supanna, or actually any being in the animal realm, to attain to liberation, to become a stream enterer in that lifetime. We have some incidents in the Jatakas about a Naga who becomes devout and wants to take up the practice, usually in the form of taking the opposite vows on the new and full moon. And in one of these stories, the Naga is quite explicit about his intention in taking the practice. He says it's not for liberation or attaining enlightenment; it's to attain a heavenly rebirth. He says, enough of this animal existence, this frog-eating existence, as he calls it. I wish to take a higher rebirth. So that's the highest aspiration that's possible for one of these beings. So as powerful and even wise at times that they may be, they're still animals. They're not at the human level. We have at least one case in the Jatakas of a human man, a prince, marrying a Naga woman and bearing half human, half Naga children. And they were required for their health to spend some time every day in a pool of water. Said their watery nature was too delicate. Some Nagas can live a very long time. There are some great Nagas, Maha-Nagas, and in one place it said that there are 7 of them who live for the entire Kappa, the entire age of one world system. There's quite a charming story about the Bodhisattva on his enlightenment night before he became the Buddha. After he ate the bowl of milk rice given him by the shepherd girl Sujata, he put the empty bowl into the stream of the river, and he said, "If I am to attain supreme enlightenment this night, may this bowl float upstream." And it did so. It floated upstream several yards and then sank. And when it sank to the bottom of the river, it landed with an audible click onto a pile of 3 other bowls, identical bowls, dating from the 3 previous Buddhas. And there was a great Naga, a Maha-Naga, sleeping there, curled up, sleeping. And the click of the bowl woke him up, and he opened his eyes and said, "Oh, another Buddha has come into this world so soon." The nature of these beings, particularly Nagas, is neither really, in general, neither benevolent nor malevolent. They have their own. They do their own thing. They're not, but they can be. They can be helpful and benevolent to humans in some incidents, but they can also be dangerous. They tend to be very proud and easily offended, and can become enraged. And when they do so, anyone who's got on their wrong side is in great peril. They're also very grateful if someone does them a service. There are a couple of stories that follow a similar motif, that a Naga king is, while visiting the human realm and observing the opposite of vows, he's captured by a snake charmer, and then he's freed or liberated by a human being. And as a reward, the human being is allowed to go and visit the Naga realm. And the human will stay in the Naga realm for a long time, often 100 years, enjoying the sense pleasures of the Naga realm, and then grow weary of it and return to the human world. There's one slightly different episode where a tricky fellow, a kind of a rogue, manages to trick or bamboozle a Naga into taking him into the Naga world, but he's unable to enjoy the sense pleasures of the Naga world because of his bad karma. The Naga maidens, who to ordinary human beings, they seem in their human form, they seem very beautiful and attractive. To him, they seem like fierce yakinis, fierce demonic beings. The crystal palaces of the Nagas seem to him like a dreary prison. This tells us something about the nature of perception and the magical nature of these realms that are created to a large degree by our perception, which actually applies even to this human world. There's the Zen writer Dogen, a medieval Zen teacher, whose book, the Rivers and Mountains Sutra, in one place he talks about the different realms as being a product of perception, and he gives the example of a river. He says, to a human being it seems like clear flowing water. To a being in the hell realm it appears as molten lava, and to a Naga it appears as a realm of crystal palaces. So this is a whole theory of cosmology as being based on perception, which is quite intriguing. And this story from the Jatakas seems to be in that same vein. One curious incident involving Nagas that I have to mention is a Naga who, at the time of the Buddha, he wished to become a bhikkhu, and he assumed a human form and took ordination. But it's a rule of Naga nature that If whenever they fall asleep, they revert to their natural form, which is that of a large snake. So he was sleeping with the other novices in the common hall in the sala, and in the night he turned into a giant snake, and the others Samanas became terrified and ran fleeing out of the building in all directions, crying out loud. And when this story got back to the Buddha, he laid down the rule that from now on we'll only ordain human beings. And it's still a part of the ordination ceremony to this day, that one of the questions that's asked the aspirant is, Manusosi, are you human? You know, it's still a requirement to be human, to keep these tricky Nagas out of the Sangha. So I think I'll stop there. There's a few words about Nagas and Supannas. I can see there's a lot of activity in the chat. So let me just get that up to where I can more easily read it, and we'll see what's going on there. The story of the Naga who encompassed Mount Sinru harkens to Nordic Jurmangadar. Thoughts or comments? Yeah, in general, there's quite a lot of parallels between Indian mythology and Nordic mythology, somewhat also to Greek mythology, but I think there's closer parallels to the Norse mythology, and there's a clear historical link in that all these cultures came from the Aryan migrations in the second millennium BC, and there's a common root to all these mythologies, so that you end up finding a lot of crossover. Okay, I have two questions related to bodhisattvas and Buddhist cosmology. Number one, is it possible for a bodhisattva who has received a prediction of the bodhisattva vow from Buddha to be reborn in any of the woeful states of existence, apaya? They can be reborn in the animal realm, but not in the ghost realm or the hell realm. Once they're on the bodhisattva path, once they've made the vow in the presence of a Buddha, then their path is fixed, and they can be reborn as an animal or a human or as a deva. Do bodhisattvas receive subsequent predictions from the other Buddha after the first prediction? No, at least we don't have any incidents of that. The bodhisattva takes the vow before a Buddha, and the Buddha then makes a series of predictions in the nature of, I see that in 92 aeons you will become, you will succeed in attaining Buddhahood. You will be born in the kingdom of the Sakyans. Your name will be Siddhartha. Your clan will be Gotama. You will have 2 chief disciples, etc., etc. It makes a few specific predictions, but it seems to be a one-off. Next question. A formless being is pure mind. When it ceases, if it reincarnates in a form, it rises along with the physical body. How can we explain this in an Abhidhamma way, analyzing occurring phenomena moment by moment, the cause and conditions to which mind gives rise to the physical body? Well, let's take the case, to simplify things, let's take the case he's reborn as from the formless realm into the human realm. Then a consciousness re-arises in a woman's womb at the moment of conception, and the body, as in all cases, the body comes from physical causes. It comes from the father's sperm and the mother's egg, and is nurtured and fed by the biological process ultimately stemming from the food that the mother consumes. So the rupa arises, from rupa, but the form, the shape is guided by kama and consciousness. Are Nagas the same as the other Indian mythical sea creature called Makara? No, they're separate. The Makara are gigantic fish that live in the sea. They're sea monsters, but they're always described as fish, giant fish. And they can assume bodies up to 1,000 yojanas in length, so that they're enormously huge. But they're not the same as Nagas. They're another species. Also, are Dakinis the Tibetans speak are related to Nagas? I don't think so. Dakinis are female deities, and I don't ever see. I'm not a real expert on Tibetan material, but from what I know, they're not in any way associated with Nagas or serpents. Someone else says they're air elementals. I think that sounds a lot closer. Why is trying to get as close as possible intellect can get to understand the unconditioned, etc. Uh, eternal practice considered a poison arrow kind of question. Well, the reason is because the very nature of the unconditioned is it cannot be grasped by reason. So when you attempt to reason about it and to formulate theories about it, you're just confusing and misleading yourself. You're not getting closer to it. You're creating a kind of false illusion that you can end up attaching to. It's better to just have a completely open mind and strive to have the actual experience, then all your questions are answered. Is there some parallel between Nagas and those beings we today call reptilians? Yeah, this question has actually come up quite a bit whenever I talk about Nagas. It's possible. I wouldn't rule it out, but I have some hesitancy in that because the descriptions we have of reptilians in the modern folklore about reptilians, they're malevolent beings who are seeking to dominate and control humanity. Whereas I don't see that in any of the stories of Nagas, that they're trying to dominate or control humans. They really just want to exist in their own realm, and their interactions with humans are few and far between. And I don't see them, although obviously there's some similarities in that they're both reptile beings and they're both shapeshifters. What do gears represent in Buddhism? I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you mean by gears in this context. Are you referring to wheels? I'll wait to see if you can clarify that question. I'll try and answer it, but I'm not sure what you represent by gears. Why are Nagas and Supannas part of the animal realm? Based on the exalted palates and such, it seems to have greater karma than humans. Wouldn't they be more like low-level devas? That's an interesting point. They do have in many ways, a deva-like existence, especially the Nagas, who were described as living in palaces of crystal and lapis lazuli, and they have many of the attributes or accoutrements of devas, in that they enjoy sensual pleasures and so on. But they're still considered an animal form, which is, I think it's really a limitation of their level of consciousness, which tends to be more, even though they might have some intelligence, they don't have the wisdom of human beings or devas. Where do the beings in the formless realm go? How do they get karma without form? They can't really make karma or in that existence, or very little. I imagine they could possibly make karma of thought, but they're not. It's like a long hiatus or break in the stream that they eventually end up falling from that realm when their karma runs out. And they have made a certain amount of karma to be reborn in that existence, the formless existence. But then when that karma runs out, they're reborn into a lower realm and take a shape again. Regarding the ordination question, how can anyone answer confidently? Who's to say we really are what's in our DNA? Seems oddly atta-affirming. I would affirm my humanity, but don't know. Well, I think the definition of being a human is pretty straightforward, and the intention of the definition here is quite straightforward. It's just a being who is born of human mother and father and has human body, human consciousness. I don't think that it was seen as a complicated question at the time to say who's a human and who's not. Why are devas and pretas depicted as human looking? Do they look like us, or are they just pictured that way? That's something we can't really know. We can't really know for sure. The devas, in their own existence, they are. You're correct. They're always depicted as human looking, as very beautiful humans. And is that just a projection of our own cultural bias, or is that their actual native form? I tend to think it's probably that's probably how they actually appear. I don't see why they would take any other form. And you go on in your question to talk about traits arising from evolutionary development. The devas wouldn't be subject to evolutionary development because they don't reproduce sexually. It may be a connection to the human realm in that it's humans who are primarily reborn there, and that may be an explanation. As for petas, they're fallen from the human realm, so they often take a human shape. But we also have some descriptions of petas in monstrous kind of forms, either like animals or just as distorted demonic sort of beings. So they're not as fixed in form as the devas are. Is Krishna in the Buddhist cosmology? He claims himself to be a god. No, not actually as such, Krishna. There is mention in one of the Jatakas of a being called Kanha, which I have seen, it's stated that that's a linguistic form of Krishna, and it may be that it was an early form of the idea of Krishna, but there's no Krishna as is known in, say, in the Bhagavad Gita or in later Hindu theology is not found anywhere in Buddhism. Do formless beings interact with each other? Um, I don't think there's a definitive answer to that. I would think they very well might do so. Uh, they don't have any location in space, and they're pure mind. Now, all they have is thought. So it may be that they can share thoughts. I don't know because there's no statement one way or the other on that. Do these supernormal stories have esoteric meaning, or are they literal meaning, such as the bull going upstream in the river? Well, unless you were there, you wouldn't know. It's not, we can't really know for sure whether that story actually occurred historically or not. I wouldn't rule definitively either way on such a question. This interesting. You said beings in formless realms, karma eventually runs out and they go back down. It's not how good karma works. It just gives you time in higher realms. Yeah, basically that's true. It's also true for bad karma. When a being goes to the hell realms, they can't make karma very easily in the hell realms, and so they just continue to suffer there until their bad karma runs out. Uh, how do you stop suffering the pain of loneliness and start enjoying solitude? Meditation. That's simple. The more samadhi you have, the more you will enjoy solitude. If we are trapped in samsara, did we do something wrong to be in the pains of suffering like earth? Yes. Yeah, basically, you're experiencing the fruits of your karma, but your karma doesn't seem like it's all that bad. If you're born as a human being, then you have more good karma than bad. Is that the case that karma gives you time in higher realms, and why would anyone want to accrue good karma knowing the human realm is most beneficial? You can make it, and the Buddha talks about this, making an aspiration of, if you've accumulated good karma to attain a good rebirth, you can make an aspiration as to where you wish to be born, and it will not guarantee, but it will have a strong influence on where you reappear. Maharoga appear in the stories. Are they the same as Nagas? Yeah, it's just another name for great Naga. Do you know or have heard stories of people interacting with Nagas in modern times? There is stories about some of the famous Thai Ajahns like Ajahn Mun having interactions with various kind of supernatural beings, including Nagas. Okay, so I think that we seem to be running down here. Unless there's another question or two pops in at the last minute, we'll make an ending. Okay, so I'm not seeing. Oh wait, here's one. Let's see. I am looking for first-hand accounts of the civilization and attainment of the Dibachaku. I've heard some of the senior monks in the Thai forest tradition have written about this in detail. Could you recommend any material in this regard? I would start with the biography of Ajahn Mun by Ajahn Mahabua, which contains many incidents of kind of supernatural interactions. Where is the Buddha now if he escaped samsara? That's actually a unanswerable question, as the Buddha refused to say because it can't be defined. With the Tathagata, does the Tathagata exist after death? Doesn't fit the case. Does he not exist? Doesn't fit the case. Does he both exist and not exist? Doesn't fit the case. Does he neither exist nor not exist? Doesn't fit the case. So it's not something we can describe or even speculate about. Okay, so I'll take leave, and next week we're gonna move on to a discussion of the human realm. So if you know any humans, you might ask them, you might invite them to attend. Okay.